Hello and welcome back. We have our very special guest, Matt Blois, with us. He is one of our many contributors here at FreightWaves, covering a lot what's going on in healthcare. He has an awesome podcast and show, Medically Necessary. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Lovely, sir. Thanks for joining us this morning. Welcome to FreightWaves Now. I hope you had a nice Memorial Day weekend. So, what you've been writing about recently? I saw you had an article kind of about Amazon thinking about getting more into healthcare supply chains. We've seen Walmart doing the same, opening up little shops everywhere. What is the story there?
Yeah, I mean that was mostly looking at some reports from Business Insider. They've got some great reporters there who are looking at what Silicon Valley is doing and what tech's doing in the healthcare supply chain. But basically, what's going on there is Amazon is apparently, according to Business Insider, thinking about opening up some physical pharmacies, which follows up on they started this program, Amazon Pharmacy, for where you could get your drugs through Amazon.com. I think in November 2020. So this would be sort of the next step, opening a physical store. And apparently, I mean, it's all very preliminary, nothing official, but could be things like putting into Whole Foods because they've got that, they've got that brand that they can use.
So, Matt, this is only, I think, almost one of the next logical steps for Amazon, who seems to have their hand in a little bit almost everything. I mean, it's kind of expected, but do
Mhm.
you think this is going to be one of those ventures that's going to be something that they kind of can implement quickly, or do you think this is going to take some time? I mean, this is going to be an industry that's going to have a lot more regulations than some of their e-commerce things. So, do you think this is going to be a segment that they have rapid growth in, or something a little bit more, slower paced?
Yeah, so I mean, I think so I haven't talked to Amazon about this. This is all just kind of I'm reading what other people have been reporting. So I mean, but what I read in Business Insider is that it looks like it would take about a year to even open up a physical store, and things aren't even really formalized that as a plan. So I think if this happens, it would be pretty far into the future. And then one of the other things I was reading about as people were reacting to some of these reports was looking at how Amazon has impacted other parts of the or other industries. I mean, obviously retail, like we don't have Borders bookstores anymore, and that's feels like largely because of Amazon. But when you look at things like grocery, like they did buy Whole Foods, and we don't have only have Amazon grocery stores in the world now. So I mean, to me it feels like it's not totally inevitable, but I mean, but they are making a lot of moves in the healthcare space, so it's not like they're totally naive in this. I mean, they have a big sort of telehealth program, telehealth thing that previously I think they were using it mostly for their employees, and now it's really expanding to other people. So they did a lot with that last year. So I mean, they've got a lot of people thinking about how they can be working in healthcare, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, I read about the supply chain, and Amazon's got a pretty powerful supply chain. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how they make use of that supply chain within healthcare.
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned telehealth. You kind of just mentioned that playbook that they run. First and best customers, create something for ourselves that works really well, and then create it so good that we can use it elsewhere. They've done that time and time again. Matt, you've also been writing about how
Mhm.
these pharmaceutical supply chains are kind of transitioning to a post-pandemic world. What does that entail?
Yeah, so I think with yet to be seen. I mean, there's a little bit there's sort of the bigger picture and shorter term. So in shorter term, company distributors like McKesson have been doing a ton of. This is the company that is distributing the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines for the federal government Operation Warp Speed. That was obviously a huge project that they had going, but normally what they do is bringing drugs or medical devices to like health healthcare providers. And obviously during the pandemic, healthcare usage besides COVID-19 stuff just went way down and bounced back pretty quickly. I think by the time we got to the end of 2020, it was not quite up there at it was like in that 90 to 85, 90, 95% range of full utilization. That big surge in January kind of took things down a bit, but now, as I've been listening to sort of conference calls over the last couple of weeks, it's been sounding like a lot of these companies that are involved in healthcare supply chain stuff are thinking, okay, we're getting we're close to getting back to 100% of where we were pre-COVID, and that means that more of what they normally do, more of getting the same drugs that they used to be giving out to healthcare providers, getting the same amounts of PPE and things like that. And so just a little bit more getting back to normal healthcare usage rather than the testing, vaccines, things like that.
So, Matt, you mentioned back to normal healthcare usage, but there's been, of course, in every industry, rapid change throughout the pandemic. Are there any trends that you've seen that are going to be long lasting or new to the field as we kind of return to that normalcy that you mentioned?
Yeah. So one of the big ones that I already mentioned telehealth, but it's kind of interesting to look at the utilization on that. Before the pandemic, it's just tiny. I mean, just a minuscule fraction of doctor's office visits, and any of it's just made up such a tiny portion. And during like April, May of 2020, it was huge. I mean, it was everybody was using telehealth. Really dropped down after that, but it's settled out at a point that's way higher than it used to be. And so I think that's here to stay. A couple of weeks ago, I did a story even about a company called Medically Home, where they help hospitals set up these hospital to home programs where they're providing, hospital level care to people at home. Some of that's through, healthcare providers are showing up at their house, but a lot of it is using things like remote patient monitoring, sort of checking their vital signs using technology from afar and telehealth tools like that. So I think we're going to see more and more of that for sure.
Right, that reminds me a lot of online grocery shopping. We were so reluctant to do it prior, only like 2-3% prior to the pandemic. Now it's something like 15-16%, so that's a huge jump, 4 or 5 times X what it was prior. Thank you so much, Matt. Where should everybody go to find a little bit more about Medically Necessary?
If you go to freightwaves.com/medically necessary, that should take you to everything that you want to know about.
All right, easy enough. Thank you so much, sir.